It was a modest house, its walls seemingly holding the secrets of entire generations, each crack telling a story no one had ever heard. The floor creaked beneath hurried, silent footsteps, as if every movement were being watched by unseen eyes. The constant scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the aroma of old books, spreading a sense of familiar routine, but also of something incomplete, something missing. Every noise, the clock ticking, the rain beating against the window, the wind whispering through the cracks seemed to amplify the silence that weighed heavily on that home. She was still young. She had simple but brilliant dreams: to study, to have a dignified life, to feel loved. Dreams that seemed modest to some, but to her they were entire universes of possibilities. Her gaze was a mixture of curiosity and hope, a silent flame that no one dared extinguish. Each morning she woke with the determination to try, to believe that this day could be different, that she could find signs of affection, small doses of care that would make the absence of those who should be by her side bearable. But the family that was supposed to support her turned their backs. It wasn't just contempt. It was a gradual, almost imperceptible abandonment that made her feel invisible within the home. Meals were solitary, with empty plates all around and conversations that never included her. Every closed door, every averted glance, every unspoken word seemed to whisper, "You don't belong here." And yet, even in the face of so many closed doors, something inside her resisted. There was hope, a spark that refused to be extinguished, hidden beneath the crushing weight of abandonment, fueling a silent desire to prove she could be more than everyone believed. She spent hours observing life unfolding around her, trying to understand where she had gone wrong, or if there was anywhere in the world she could call home. The emptiness was deep, almost palpable, but paradoxically, it was in this emptiness that something greater was born, a silent strength, a determination that no one could measure, but which grew each day, like firm roots trying to penetrate the concrete. Every secret tear shed, every sigh of solitude, every night she lay without hugs or words of affection, all became fuel. Not fuel of anger or hatred, but of something rarer, courage. And this courage began to create space for bigger dreams. While the world seemed to have forgotten her, she began to become her own family, to hear her own voice and trust her own steps. Each small victory, a finished book, a lesson learned, a job done with excellence was like a brick building something no one could destroy. And at the same time as she grew in silence, a seed of mystery was planted. Something big was about to happen, something that would change everything, and that those who scorned her could never have foreseen. Because sometimes true strength isn't born from comfort, security, or immediate love. It's born from the absence of all that, from the silence that forces the soul to turn inward, to discover resources it never imagined it possessed. And in that small, modest space, filled with routine noises and walls that held untold stories, the protagonist of that story began to become an invisible, nearly indestructible force, ready to reveal to the world that abandonment doesn't define anyone. As the viewer's imaginary camera pans across every corner of that home, sensing the loneliness and hope, the feeling emerges that something incredible is about to happen. That silence, that abandonment, wasn't the end, but the prelude to a transformation that would surprise everyone. And it's at this point that the audience's heart begins to race, their curiosity growing. How could someone so young, so alone, transform pain into power, abandonment into triumph? The answer, still unseen, is about to be revealed. The first signs came subtly, almost imperceptibly. Silent force already showed that nothing would ever be the same. A cold gaze crossing the room, a smile that never arrived, cutting words thrown carelessly, doors that closed without warning. Everything seemed to whisper, day after day, "You don't belong here," and each gesture carried a painful repetition, as if the world were constantly reminding her that in this house she had no place. But nothing hurt more than realizing that those who promised to love her, those who should have been her safe haven, had chosen to ignore her. The feeling of abandonment was like an invisible weight pressing down on her chest, making every breath harder, every movement more tiring. She wept silently, alone in her room, her hands trembling and her heart aching. She wondered if she would ever escape that shadow of rejection that seemed to follow her every step, that seemed to fill every corner of her life with absence and coldness. The days became long and heavy. Each morning seemed to demand more than her strength could offer. Every denied smile, every harsh word or indifference received was a reminder that the battle would be constant. Each night, the fear of not being enough followed her to her pillow. She questioned the value of her own effort, what she needed to change in herself to finally be noticed, loved, accepted. The silence around her seemed to echo the same message. You are alone. But even in this bleak scenario, something inside her was beginning to awaken. A small, almost imperceptible spark of determination slowly ignited, illuminating the shadows surrounding her. It was a strange feeling, a mix of courage and quiet stubbornness, a strength that arose from the pain itself. Every tear she shed, every sigh of solitude, began to turn into fuel. The rejection that once seemed to crush her now began to become the motivation to prove, first to herself that she could resist, that she could survive, and then to the world that it would be impossible to erase. She began to observe every detail of life around her, learning from what she saw and what she didn't. Every cold gesture became a reminder that nothing could depend on the approval of others. Every harsh word became a silent lesson. If no one believes, you'll have to believe in yourself. And so, step by step, she began to realize that true strength didn't come from comfort, affection, or support. It came from silence, solitude, and the determination not to let pain define her destiny. And in that instant, an unexpected feeling began to grow alongside the spark of determination, curiosity about her own potential. Who would she be if she could transform all that rejection into power? What paths would open up if, instead of giving in to the pain, she decided to transform it into momentum for something greater? The answer was still hidden, but the feeling was clear. Something grand was about to happen, something capable of turning her life upside down and proving that no amount of abandonment can extinguish a determined soul. And it's at this point, as the audience's hearts race, that the story prepares for the next step, that moment of rupture, when pain turns into action, when the silent battle against discouragement becomes the starting point for an extraordinary journey. The question that lingers in the air is inevitable. How could someone so wounded, so alone, transform abandonment into triumph? The answer is about to be revealed, and no one could have imagined what. was to come. It was precisely at the moment she thought it was all over that she discovered something no one could take from her own strength. For a moment, the world seemed to crumble, as if the silence of abandonment had reached its peak. Doors closed, gazes remained cold, and the emptiness seemed even greater than before. But deep down, a persistent spark began to burn. It was a small, almost imperceptible, yet powerful feeling. I can do it. I can do it. No one can stop me. Alone, began to rebuild herself. Each day was a challenge, each task a battle against the shadow of discouragement that insisted on haunting her. But instead of allowing herself to be drowned in fear and loneliness, she transformed each difficulty into an opportunity. She began to study diligently, absorbing every word, every concept, as if it were the key that would unlock doors that had always been denied her. Each page turned, each lesson learned, each night of silent effort became a brick in the foundation of something much greater than she could even imagine. She worked tirelessly, often invisible to the world, often without recognition, but with the conviction that the only approval that mattered was her own. Sweat, dedication, and discipline replaced tears and discouragement, and in the absolute silence grew a silent, almost relentless strength, capable of transforming pain into purpose and abandonment into determination. She began to realize that every rejection, every cold gesture, every harsh word had not been a sentence, but a hidden lesson. Everything that hurt her became fuel for her greatness. Every secret tear shed became energy. Every sleepless night became planning. And every feeling of loneliness became an opportunity to listen to her own inner voice, the one that always knew there was more within her than anyone could ever imagine. And then the transformation happened. Step by step, brick by brick, decision by decision, something believed could exist was born, her empire. Not just an empire of luxury, but an empire built on courage, resilience, and vision. A silent yet powerful empire that needed no applause or immediate recognition. It existed because it had been built with sweat, intelligence, and above all, an unshakable faith in itself. What was once pain became discipline. What was once abandonment became determination. Each small, quiet success made her realize that her life would not be defined by those who left, by what she chose to build for herself. Each obstacle overcome was proof that true strength doesn't depend on approval or support, but on the courage to persist when no one believes in it. As she advanced, building her empire invisible to the eyes of the world, something more extraordinary began to emerge, an internal transformation. Fear and loneliness were replaced by confidence and clarity. Anger and pain gave way to quiet gratitude, for she realized that if she had been protected and praised, she might never have discovered the potential that lay within her. And it is at this moment that the story takes on an almost magical dimension. The empire born of silence was not only material, but also emotional, mental, and spiritual. The audience begins to feel this strength along with her. Each silent achievement sparks the imagination. If someone so wounded, so alone, managed to build something so great, then everyone can be inspired. Each act of courage becomes a life lesson. Each step taken by the protagonist is an invitation for each viewer to reflect on their own strength. And it is at this point that the narrative creates maximum anticipation. What will the reaction of those who abandoned her be? What will it be like when the world finally realizes the power she has built in silence? The story leaves the audience hanging in suspense, certain of one thing: something extraordinary is about to happen. The empire no one believed existed was born from the silent courage of someone who refused to give up, who transformed pain into fuel and loneliness into strategy. And as each detail of her life is revealed, the inevitable question grows: what will be the next steps for someone who learned to become unstoppable, even when the world said she had no chance? And it is precisely this question that keeps the viewer's heart racing, waiting for the next chapter, for the outcome that will show not only external achievements, but the victory of a soul that, in silence, discovered its true greatness. She finally understood something no one could ever teach her. Abandonment, however cruel, did not define her. It wasn't the closed doors, the indifferent looks, or the harsh words that would shape who she would be. What truly mattered was the path she chose to walk, even when it seemed impossible. Every wound, every silent scar, transformed into strength. Every moment of solitude into fuel to keep moving forward. And silence that seemed suffocating at first, became the language of her greatness, a space where her ideas flourished, where her courage solidified, where her determination became unshakable. Today, looking back on everything she accomplished, you realize that her greatest victory was never just about numbers, titles, or external recognition. The true achievement lay in what no one could measure: the ability to never give up, even when the whole world told her it wasn't worth it. Every step taken, every obstacle overcome, every night when discouragement tried to overwhelm her, became part of a silent but profound legacy. She understood that the power to transform pain into momentum lay not in receiving applause, but in believing in herself when no one else did. And this is where the greatest lesson emerges. Sometimes those who abandon us, who hurt us, or who choose to ignore us, unwittingly teach us something no gesture of love could. They show us that we are capable of becoming unstoppable, that our strength does not depend on anyone's approval, but on the courage to continue, the discipline to stand firm, the self-love that is built in the shadows of contempt. Each abandonment, therefore, becomes an opportunity in disguise, an invitation to discover that the greatest revolution we can achieve is within ourselves. She smiled at her own story, not with bitterness, but with silent gratitude. Gratitude for every hardship, for every rejection, for every silence that made her hear her own voice. Today, life not only rewarded her efforts, it recognized the greatness of those who didn't give up, of those who knew how to transform pain into strategy, abandonment into action, and silence into power. The journey wasn't easy, but every tear shed, every fear she faced, every night she felt alone, now revealed itself as a stepping stone that led her to the top of herself. And it's at this point that every viewer realizes that her story isn't just inspiring, it's a call to action. Because if someone who faced so much, who was left to fend for herself, could become unstoppable, then so can each of us. The question is, are you willing to turn your challenges into momentum? Are you ready to see the strength within yourself when no one else believes it?